when we think about how to actually get into and plan and execute a podcast advertising campaign, it's going to look a lot like other channels that you've executed. I like to say media are a set of transmission tools. I actually, in a past life, launched a couple of trading desks. I was an early adopter of DSPs when it came to the digital display, like evolution into programmatic buying. So when I say like it's like other campaigns and other mediums that you've worked in, it is like other campaigns and mediums that you've worked in. There's just always going to be a little extra flavor, a little extra spice that diversifies each medium from the other. So when we think about partner research, there's 3 ways that you can go. You can go it in-house, you can work with an agency, or you can work in-house with a consultancy to support like us. When it comes to media planning, this is basically when you think about requests for proposals or RFPs, this is where we RFP the marketplace. We'll reach out to networks, partners, publishers, independent shows. Fun fact, we actually work with, I think independent shows are our 4th largest in aggregate partner. So we still do a lot of work with independents here. We tend to see really great performance from them. So this is where also we'll start our negotiations with partners. When we get into contracting the media placements that we're buying, then we get into creative and onboarding, right? So I'll get into this a little later. You're not looking to give the hosts a script. There is nothing worse than when it's like, hello, I am reading this ad for Right Side Up. Like, no one cares. But you can just immediately tell that people are unengaged. The host has never seen your copy before, which is always one of my favorite ones. When I hear them start to read like, please pick one intro. Oh, you don't want that to happen. What you're trying to do is get out of the way of the host so that they could speak openly in a qualified manner about your product or service. So this also is where the host onboarding process is super important. When we think about the way that we're working with hosts, and now it's a little harder now. We used to actually get on the phone with hosts back in the day, 5 or 6 years ago. We'll still get on the phone with some hosts, but a lot of the times we're talking to producers, talking to sales staff or support like campaign management staff, and we're helping them understand the products and its benefits because they are probably in the room when the reads are happening. Actually, Giancarlo Bizzarro from Crooked Media has a great story. He's often in the room with the guys who record the ads for Pod Save America, et cetera. And he is constantly giving them creative direction. They had a tweet go viral for everything that he edited out. So it just shows you it's a really collaborative process between all of the people who work at a network or publisher. When it comes to measurement, this is where, if you've ever listened to a podcast ad, since I'm on the Crooked Ben, I'll just keep going. You may or may not have heard, the boys who do Pod Save America be like, hey, go to brooklinen.com/crooked and you'll get X amount off of your Y purchase. So that is where primarily you'll see a lot of brands in the space capturing direct activity through a vanity URL or, go to download the DoorDash app and use code Crooked for blah, blah, blah. This is also where they'll capture direct response. Then we think about capturing indirect response. There's a bevy of ways that we'll get into later where you could do that. And then is when the work really starts. When you get media off the ground and you launch, then it's about monitoring the spots, making sure that they are, injected on time, that they are hitting the brand's yeses, that they aren't hitting the brand's no's, that you're working over time to optimize the way that media is performing, optimizing reads over time, and then you're iteratively scaling, right? Your initial, I'll get into it here. This is kind of like what a launch timeline looks like. 6 weeks is probably on the longer side for us. I tend to tell people that 6 weeks is if you have many hands in the creative process, then probably 5 to 6 weeks. If you are in a regulated industry like financial tech, liquor, healthcare, then you will probably be on the longer side. Conversely, if you're a really small, like modest size seed to Series A, D2C, with a modest marketing team and modest budgets, you could probably get live in 3 to 4 weeks. So it's a bit of a gamut, but this is, when you look at this, just to lay it out in a Gantt, this is kind of the steps of the process that I just outlined over a time period. And then, like I said, launch week is kind of where the work really starts of making sure that the campaign is actually working. When it comes to ad lengths, they vary, but mid-rolls are the ad unit to beat. The way that we typically buy the channel is one of two ways. Either it's on a spot cost basis, meaning that it's an estimated number of downloads multiplied by a CPM, and that is how you get your fixed spot cost, or it's on impressions, which are also downloads. And then you're basically paying per impression, you're paying per 1,000 impressions CPM or cost per mille. The fact that I know that, again, what a nerd. But that's where you are able to actually just pay for delivered impressions. There are pros and cons to each approach. It's been rare that I have not had an embedded spot over deliver over a long period of time, right? They might have some soft delivery in that like 45-day window, but usually when spots are embedded in perpetuity, it's not really a question of if they'll hit delivery, it's when. And then on the other end of it, impression-based ads are good for brands where like they might want to change up messaging frequently. They need more flexibility in the way that they're ad serving, et cetera. When it comes to flighting, we tend to recommend flighting every 3 weeks. And now this changes a little bit based on dynamic insertion, but basically what you're trying to do here is capitalize on media consumption pattern of the channel. There's a fine line between saturating and oversaturating, right? You want enough frequency for people to be able to be like, oh, I know that brand, and not too much frequency so that you're like, ugh, I know that brand. So there's a dance where you try to figure out the optimal share of voice for a flight. There are some exceptions to this rule. Like sometimes with bigger shows, we'll flight 1/4. Sometimes when we're in like Q5 for a fintech brand, we'll flight 1/2. We'll flight closer together just because, again, we're trying to capitalize on seasonality, et cetera. So really depends. Where are we at with programmatic and podcasting? I have and can do an entire hour talk on this. The TLDR is that we are still in the relative beginning of ad monetization via these kinds of technology first solutions. When you think about it, this medium has only been monetized for now 13 years. So looking at also, I actually, if you'd like, I can send it to you after this, or if you reach out to us, one of us will send it to you. On our site, I did a whole talk on programmatic last year at Podcast Movement, and I compared and contrasted the adoption of this technology in podcasting to the way that it has been adopted and used in digital advertising. And it is vastly different. But it also, the time frame for it is a little more condensed, right? So when we think about networks rose in prominence between 2012 and 2016, and what that really helped to do was aggregate the buying pool for buyers like myself, agency buyers, brands, et cetera. We didn't have even a DSP in the space until Panoply became Megaphone in 2018. And then they sold to Spotify. So when you think about it, we are now at the point where we have the opportunity to work with a DSP like the Trade Desk, for example, to place ads in podcasts themselves. Candidly, the way I like to explain this to most advertisers is that when you do that, you are buying my leftovers. You are buying the podcasts and shows that don't make our cut to be monetized, because we buy regularly somewhere between 4,000 and 5,000 shows. I would say in any given calendar year, we're probably buying 10,000 shows, something like that. And so there are millions of podcasts out there. Most of them do not meet the hurdle for monetization, or they do not fall within the parameters of what I would consider like a solid buy, right? Again, it's like, okay, so you have a podcast, you published 4 episodes, and your mom and your grandma listen to it. Like, congratulations, but that doesn't meet my criteria for sponsoring your podcast, right? So there's going to be there's going to be an evolution here. And I'm sorry, but Princess Bride is one of the best movies of all time. Fight me about it. But people keep using the word programmatic. And I love this because it does not mean what it thinks they mean. Like it actually has been kind of interesting for me because, again, I come from digital advertising. I have been in digital in some way, shape, or form since 2005. When I became an intern in college and worked at a paid search agency. So I've been in digital for a really long time. For me to be against, or not against, but concerned about the adoption of technology to this space, for me, it's because we aren't yet at the point where we have RTB or real-time bidding. We don't have an open exchange. Again, we don't have the ability to do time-based frequency caps. When it comes to audience targeting, the same challenges that you're having in Meta are going to also happen here, except even more so because it's not a closed platform that we're buying on. So when brands come in and they want to do like, I just want to buy it programmatically and I want to give Spotify X amount of money, I'm like, yeah, that's not podcast advertising though. It's you're advertising on podcasts, but when it comes to for want of a better word, the playbook for how DR brands have successfully scaled this medium, you're not doing it. That is not the same thing. What is good about dynamic insertion, it allows us to be a little more immediate and a little more adaptable about creative because ads are stitched into the podcast episode at the time of download. The difference here is dynamic insertion is ad insertion technology. It's not a buying mechanism. It's just the technology. There's nothing wrong with the technology. The challenges come in the ways that publishers and networks are applying the technology to their catalog, if that makes sense. What is cool though, it allows us to like serve different creative to different listeners. Like this is the start of the advent and application of digital ad serving technology to our channel. Really cool. But again, you keep using that word and I do not think it means what you think it means. When it comes to setting expectations for investment in the channel, what do you get for your money? I very often now say, I don't often recommend that brands start under $75,000 for like a 3-month campaign. Couple of reasons. The biggest one being shows are just larger than they used to be. And brands are also spending more on media usually before they come to this channel. So when it comes to when it comes to a first test, there's a couple of hurdles we're trying to clear. What we're trying to do is, one, we want to test enough dollars that it's meaningful and we can spread across a decent number of genres. We actually at Right Side Up have recategorized genres because society and culture is so broad as to be meaningless. Like, thank you, iTunes, but I don't even know what that means. So we have recategorized every show that we buy into one of about 100 verticals. And so it's like female aspirational is going to be different than female advice, than female lifestyle. True crime has different flavors. Like, what's your poison? Is it murder? Is it cults? Like, it's a very, what you really want to do when you're testing into the channel is find your verticals, find your areas or arenas or avenues, whatever, where you find success and you expand there. Right. So it's about finding what works, cutting what doesn't. And for first-time advertisers in the medium, you can probably expect to see payback in the first flight, like meaning $1 ROAS or better from somewhere between, I would say industry average is around 25 to 30%. Not to toot our own horn, but Right Side Up is usually somewhere in the vicinity of like 35, 40% plus. And the magic number is 50. When it comes to like just immediate proof positive, like LFG, let's go. If you hit 50% or over of the first show, like the first batch of test shows that you're like, oh, I should renew these tomorrow. These are already hitting my goals without even really much optimization. This channel is right for you. If you're in that like 25 to 40%, this channel is still right for you. We just need to dial in the placements, right? Again, it's like anything else. It's like when you're in AdWords and you're like, oh, this ad group's working really well. That one's not, oh, this creative is really outperforming the other ones. I should probably bring this creative to other ad groups, et cetera. The same way you optimize placements on other channels, that's what we're going to do here. Ideal podcast creative. We made up a fake company. It's called Fly, F.ly. It is the latest in carrier pigeon technology. You're welcome. So we're on, I had to have fun with this. Also, if you know our team, we take ourselves kind of seriously. We take our work really seriously, but we like to have fun. So we made up Fly, And when we think about the way that we structured ads, here in this example for Fly, we like to provide brief talking points about the brand. Your entire ad copy points, essentially, like that entire file. Sorry, I got something in my eye. That entire file should actually fit on one page. If you give somebody like many pages, I just have like a random bill from my health insurance here, so that's my prop for the day. But if you give somebody multiple pages, that host is going to get lost in the source, and they are literally going to get confused like mid-ad read, and it's going to impact the quality of your read. You want to leave room for ad lib. You don't want to make it so it would sound weird if the host reads it verbatim, right? You still want it to have some flow to it. The way that we approach copy is very formulaic, not meaning that it's the same every time, meaning we have like a formula for it. We usually give them a couple of intros. The art of the long form letter might be dead, but that doesn't mean you need to abandon the personal touch altogether. If you're looking to send a meaningful message with speed and style, try Fly. That's my podcast host impression. You guys are all welcome. I wish we could burn that part of the recording, but you could see it's like a way to get into the copy. And then you get into brand facts, all of the information that people need in order to buy today, tomorrow, basically to immediately start considering your brand if they're in the market for a similar product or service. And then you want to close with multiple iterations of your call to action, right? If you listen to podcast ads, you know that usually people are repeating it 2 to 3 times. That is generally, we like to have people repeat the call to action at some point in the ad 3 times. That is the magic number for people to actually retain it. Doesn't mean they'll actually go through with it. We'll get to that later, how we triangulate indirect response. But when we think about the anatomy of the copy, this is it. It is intro, giving people enough room in between all of these. Like for body copy, we had a host once just go off about a meal delivery service that we work with, because he was like, damn it, why do you have to bring Cheesecake Factory to my door? I'm trying to go on a diet and blah, 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 blah. And it was really fun. Wasn't in the copy, but you get the idea. It created personalization that felt really organic.
Thanks so much for tuning in. For those of you who aren't familiar with Right Side Up, we're a collective of marketing specialists who have helped more than 600 companies hit their growth goals. We have expertise across all marketing channels, including performance, lifecycle, SEO, social, analytics, creative, and more. Have a growth challenge that needs solving? We'd love to chat. Reach out to us at rightside.up.com.